Imagine learning that your surname may carry an echo from a world older than England itself, older than castles, older than kings, older even than the English language. Long before famous British family names appeared in written records, this island was divided among powerful tribal peoples, communities with their own leaders, sacred places, war traditions, and identities so deep that not even the Roman Empire could erase them completely. When Rome invaded Britain in AD 43, it expected another conquest, another province, another victory to add to its growing map of dominion. But Britain did not behave like an easy prize. It answered with resistance, it answered with rebellion, and in some regions, it answered with a stubborn cultural survival that outlasted Rome itself. Here is the mystery that still fascinates historians, genealogists, and lovers of the past today. Could some modern British surnames preserve faint traces of those ancient worlds? Not because a surname survived unchanged for 2,000 years, it did not, but because later family names often grew from places, regions, and identities whose roots reached back into pre-Roman Britain. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden history behind everyday names, places, and traditions, take a moment now to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where your family comes from. By the end of this countdown, you may hear a name you recognize, perhaps even your own, and discover that its story runs far deeper than you ever imagined. To be clear, this is where the story becomes more interesting, not less. No honest historian can promise that a modern surname proves direct descent from a specific Celtic warrior who fought the Romans. The records simply do not survive in that way, but some names do preserve something just as powerful: the memory of ancient landscapes, enduring peoples, and regional identities that refuse to disappear. And that means a surname can still open a door into Britain's tribal past, even if the path is more subtle than legend would like us to believe. So let us travel back. The Roman Empire stood at the height of its power. Its roads crossed continents. Its legions had crushed kingdoms, broken rebellions, and marched through lands once thought impossible to conquer. Emperor Claudius believed Britain would become just another jewel in Rome's imperial crown. Thousands of Roman soldiers crossed the sea carrying shields, standards, cavalry, siege equipment, and the confidence of an empire that had defeated nearly everyone in its path. But Britain was not one kingdom waiting to fall. It was a patchwork of tribal territories: the Catuvellauni, the Iceni, the Brigantes, the Silures, the Ordovices, the Domnoni, the Cantiaci, and many more. Some made alliances, some resisted at once, some shifted loyalties as the political winds changed. Yet across the island, one truth became clear: Britain would not be subdued without a fight. The Romans did conquer much of the island, but they never erased the old map entirely. In Wales, in Cornwall in the far north, and in the ancient kingdoms that survived after Roman rule collapsed, older identities endured. Languages changed, dynasties rose and fell. New invaders came: Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, Normans. Yet the land kept old memories alive in mountains, valleys, coastlines, and kingdoms. Centuries later, when hereditary surnames began to take shape in the Middle Ages, many families inherited names tied to those same places. And that is the twist at the heart of this story. These surnames are not ancient because the surnames themselves are 2,000 years old. They are ancient because the places and identities behind them may be. So now, let us begin the countdown. Number 12 is Norfolk. At first glance, Norfolk seems like a simple English regional surname, and in one sense, it is. The name itself comes from the Old English for North folk, which makes it much later than Roman Britain. But that is exactly what makes this entry so intriguing. Norfolk occupies much of the land once associated with the Iceni, the tribe whose queen Boudica launched one of the most famous rebellions in Roman history. That does not mean the surname Norfolk descends from the Iceni directly. It does not. But it does place later families within a landscape, forever linked to one of the most dramatic anti-Roman uprisings the empire ever faced. In other words, the tribal memory survives not in an unbroken family line, but in the territory itself. The ground remembers, even when the name is younger than the story. Number 11 is York. Today, York is known for medieval walls, Roman ruins, and one of the most famous historic cityscapes in Britain. But before it became a Roman stronghold or a medieval jewel, the wider region lay within the sphere of the Brigantes, the largest tribal confederation in Roman Britain. Their territory stretched across much of northern England, and their relationship with Rome was never simple. At times there was cooperation, at times open resistance, at times uneasy political compromise. The surname York is not a tribal surname. It is a place name surname, but it preserves a connection to one of the most contested and historically important landscapes in Roman Britain. Beneath the later city stood an older world, and that world helped shape everything that came after. Number 10 is Kent. This is one of the strongest names on the list. Long before England existed, the region of Kent was associated with the Cantiaci, or Canti, a people known to ancient writers even before the full Roman conquest. That gives Kent one of the deepest and clearest regional continuities in Britain. When later families took Kent as a surname, they were not claiming descent from a tribal warband, but they were carrying forward the name of one of the oldest historically recognizable regions in the country. In a story full of suggestive echoes, Kent gives us one of the clearest bridges between ancient tribal geography and later surname identity. Number 9 is Devon. Devon leads us into the Old Southwest, where the Brittonic-speaking world endured long after Roman power began to weaken elsewhere. This region is linked to the Dumnoni and later Dumnonia, a name that carries us from Iron Age tribal Britain into the post-Roman centuries when older Celtic traditions remained strong. That continuity matters, because while empires rise through armies and administration, identity often survives through region, language, and memory. Devon may be a later surname, but the landscape behind it belongs to one of Britain's deepest historical layers, one where pre-English, Brittonic life remained visible for generations. Number 8 is Wales. Here the story becomes even more powerful. Wales is not simply a county or a local district. It is an entire land associated with the survival of Brittonic culture after large parts of eastern Britain came under Anglo-Saxon control. Roman campaigns there were some of the hardest fought in the island. Tribes such as the Silures and Ordovices developed reputations for fierce resistance, aided by mountains, forests, and knowledge of the terrain. A surname like Wales does not prove ancient tribal descent, but it preserves the name of a region where pre-Roman cultural identity remained strong for centuries. In a list built on echoes, Wales is not a whisper. It is a bell still ringing. Number 7 is Welsh. This is one of the most revealing surnames in the entire countdown because its meaning captures a historical irony. The word came from a Germanic term used by Anglo-Saxons for the native Brittonic peoples they encountered, essentially meaning a foreigner or outsider. Yet those so labeled were not the newcomers at all. They were the descendants of the island's earlier inhabitants. That makes Welsh more than just a surname. It is a surviving marker of cultural encounter, conquest, and perspective. It tells us not just who remained, but how they were seen by those who arrived later. Few names preserve the tension of Britain's early medieval transformation so clearly. If you're enjoying this journey so far, this is the perfect moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment with your surname below. You may not see it on this list exactly as written because many ancient-rooted names survive in variant spellings, regional forms, or related identities, and the final entries become even more surprising from here. Number 6 is Cumbria. Cumbria takes us north toward a landscape where Britain meets one of Rome's greatest admissions of limitation. Nearby stood Hadrian's Wall, that immense frontier line, so often described as a monument to Roman power, but it was also something else, a recognition that the empire could not simply dominate every people beyond it. The name Cumbria is linked to an old Brittonic identity, related to the same root as the Welsh word Cymri, meaning fellow countrymen, or the people. That makes it one of the strongest examples of a place name preserving an older Brittonic world. A family name drawn from Cumbria carries with it not just geography, but a surviving linguistic memory of Britain's earlier inhabitants. Number 5 is Scot. And now here comes one of the great plot twists in the story. Many people assume Scot must be a straightforward surname tied to ancient Scotland and the peoples who resisted Rome in the far north. But the truth is more complicated and more interesting. Early forms of the word are connected not simply to Scotland as we imagine it today, but to the Scoti, a term that originally referred to Irish people or raiders before later becoming connected with Gaelic settlement in Scotland. That means Scot is absolutely an old and meaningful surname, but not in the simple way most people imagine. It reminds us that history is rarely tidy. Names travel, peoples move, identities shift. The deeper you dig, the less the past behaves like a neat family tree, and the more it resembles a living map of migrations, collisions, and reinventions. Number 4 is Cornwall. This may be the most misunderstood entry so far. Cornwall feels like it should offer one of the cleanest direct links to ancient tribal Britain. After all, it is one of the strongest surviving Celtic regions in England. Its language, traditions, and regional identity endured long after many other Brittonic cultures had faded. But the deeper history of the name is complex. Cornwall comes through Old English as Cornwallis, meaning something like the Cornish foreigners or Cornish Welsh. The first part may reflect an older Celtic element associated with a peninsula or horn-shaped land, while the second reflects how Anglo-Saxons described Celtic-speaking peoples. That makes Cornwall a powerful historical survival, but not a simple one. And that complexity is exactly why it belongs near the top. It shows that real history is richer than the easy legend. A name does not need to be straightforward to be ancient. Sometimes the most revealing names are the ones that preserve layers of conquest, language, and identity all at once. Number 3 is Cornish. If Cornwall is the land, Cornish is the people. And that distinction matters. Cornish identifies a cultural and regional identity that survived remarkably late into history. The Cornish language, closely related to Welsh and Britton, carried forward a Brittonic inheritance rooted deep in the ancient southwest. Roman influence reached the region, but it never erased its distinct character. Later centuries changed Cornwall politically, economically, and linguistically, yet Cornish identity endured. That makes Cornish one of the strongest surnames on this list, not because it proves a bloodline to tribal resistance, but because it preserves one of Britain's oldest continuing cultural identities. In a sense, that may be more meaningful than any romantic claim of warrior ancestry. Number 2 is Strathclyde. This is where the story widens beyond Roman Britain and into the age after Rome fell. Strathclyde was not just a landscape. It was a Brittonic kingdom that survived in the north after imperial rule collapsed. While Anglo-Saxon power grew elsewhere, Strathclyde remained a reminder that the native Brittonic world had not vanished. It had adapted. As a surname, Strathclyde is less common than others on this list, but as a historical clue, it is extraordinary. It points us toward the truth that the end of Roman Britain did not mean the end of Britain's earlier peoples. In some regions, their identities did not disappear. They evolved, persisted, and shaped the medieval future. And now, number 1. The surname that comes closest to preserving the broadest echo of Britain's original peoples is Britton, along with related forms such as Britton, Britain, Britain, and in some contexts, Breton. This is the moment where the whole puzzle snaps into focus. For much of the countdown, we have been looking at names tied to regions: Kent, Devon, Wales, Cornwall, Cumbria. But Britain points more directly to an identity. In medieval usage, names in this family could identify someone as a Briton, someone from a Brittonic-speaking background, or someone associated with communities where native British identity still mattered. It does not prove descent from a particular tribe that fought Rome, but it may preserve the memory of the Britons as a people more clearly than any other surname on the list. And that brings us to the final twist. The most fascinating truth is not that your surname can prove you descend from a specific Celtic warrior. It probably cannot. The records are too thin, the centuries are too many, the migrations are too complex. The neat legend most people hope for is not the truth, but the truth may be better. Your surname may still connect you to an ancient landscape, to a people remembered by others, to a kingdom that survived collapse, to a region where Britain resisted, adapted, and endured. These names are not fossils from the Iron Age. They are something more subtle and, in some ways, more powerful. They are living reminders that history does not vanish. It settles into the land, it lingers in language, and sometimes, without us realizing it, it survives in the names we carry every day. So, is your surname on this list, or does your family come from one of these ancient regions even if the name itself is different? Tell us in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications if you enjoy uncovering the deeper histories hidden in everyday life. Because once you start looking closely, even a surname can become a doorway into a lost world, and Britain still has many more forgotten stories waiting to be revealed.